Financial support for the production of Issues in Education is provided by the Florida State University License Plate. Your FSU license plate supports scholarships for students who enrich and contribute to our communities. Special programs, gift certificates, and rebates for first-time buyers online at fsu.edu/mytag.
Coming up today on Issues in Education, energy storage, magnets, and studying the human body. We look at some of the cool research going on in the world of materials science that could affect your life. Welcome to Issues in Education. I'm Suzanne Smith, alongside my co-host, the Florida State University President, Dr. Eric Barron. If you've heard anything about education these days, chances are you've heard someone mention the acronym STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. There's a push for more degrees in those fields, and with it, some very interesting research is coming our way, especially in the realm of materials science. Joining us today is Dr. Gregory Boebinger, Director of the National High Field Magnetic Laboratory, Dr. James Brooks, Professor of Physics at FSU, and Michael Greenleaf, a PhD candidate in materials science and engineering. They're going to tell us about some of the fascinating material science research going on at FSU and how it influences our lives. Thank you all for joining us.
You're welcome. So Dr. Brooks, maybe we could just begin with a little background. What's material science?
I'd actually like to extend that to say material science and engineering.
Yes.
Because it's very important to go from the periodic table, the elements, to the marketplace. And material science and engineering plays a key role in that pathway. I do like to think of the periodic table as a spice cabinet. And our job is to take the components, the spices, and put them together in new and useful ways. There's a complexity to the process going from the elements to biological molecules. And along the way, you start at, say, elements, and even the innocent carbon atom can have different forms. It can be a diamond. It can be the pencil lead in your number 2 pencil, or it could be a carbon nanotube. So even the elements have an incredible impact, and there's many ways to even put them together. We here at FSU do more than that. We put the elements together into compounds, semiconductors, magnets, insulators. Going even further in complexity, there's mixtures and solutions. There's people that work on things like alloys, mixtures of materials in solid solutions. Sometimes we take a very pure material and mess it up, as they do in Applied Superconductivity Center, because it turns out the superconductor, which is a complex compound system, actually performs better if it has defects or impurities in it. Likewise, impurities put into a semiconductor form the basis of modern IT technology at the hardware level.
This is a huge field. How many different fields are involved in material science?
At this point, it's impossible to do what we at FSU do without physics, chemistry, modeling and theory, and then industrial engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and chemical engineering.
Biology as well.
And biology.
All of these are working together, too. It's not just focusing on one at a time. It sounds like you're combining a lot of different things together, biology and chemistry and physics and all of that all at the same time.
Absolutely, and there's an initiative that Jim Brooks is co-chair on that Eric Barron has asked us to put together to really integrate further those various efforts in the academic departments and basically make the connections between the individual researchers. So that's absolutely a cutting-edge area here.
So, Greg, one of the gems associated with materials research is the magnet lab, as we call it. So, how does the magnet lab interface with materials research?
Two ways. One is our materials that we're using are state-of-the-art to go into the magnets. And I brought a few examples. This is a piece of steel that was ripped like a piece of paper, an inch thick. This is one of the strongest steels out there. If we had a stronger steel, we could handle the forces in the magnets better. And then the conductors we're using are some of the highest strength composites. So these use silver and copper and niobium in a new and different way to get very high strengths so that we can wind our coils. And then the third way are the superconducting magnets, where we have to develop better superconductors to use those to generate high fields. So the magnets themselves, each new record we set can be traced back to creative engineering, but also new materials that have gone into the magnet. And then probably 75% of the users who come to the magnet lab are doing research on new materials, new compounds with new properties that we don't yet understand. That's about 750 scientists a year.
Now, when people hear the strength of materials and magnets and stuff like that, they don't think about how that interacts with their daily life. Tell us a little bit about, okay, so you have a giant magnet that's really, really strong. What kind of stuff do you do with that?
So it's sometimes easiest to talk about the biomedical applications because everybody has some contact with medical practice and technologies. One of the ones that is the most clearly involving high magnetic fields, magnetic resonance imaging, MRIs. And those have very powerful superconducting magnets made of materials sort of like these. And they get to about 2 Tesla or 3 Tesla. We're now doing magnetic resonance imaging research at 7 to 10 times that field at 21 Tesla.
So tell us what a Tesla is.
So a Tesla is 10,000 times or 20,000 times the Earth's field. So our magnets are about 1 million times the Earth's field. Yeah, I sometimes slip into the jargon.
What do you see? What do you see with this? What can you see with this kind of strength?
We're able, and more to the point, our users who come to the magnet lab, because we're all about having unique facilities that attract users to FSU to do research. They're now able to image not just organs, and you've seen magnetic resonance images, but individual cells. They're able to track an individual nerve fiber. So if there's a spinal cord injury, you can tell which nerve fibers are actually damaged. How is the connectivity of the nerves throughout the brain? All of this now is being done on mice and rats, and it's very early stage research. But that's the way it always goes. And then, a decade or two later, you'll see it in doctors' offices. So that's one example that's just biomedicine.
So Mike, now here are all these visitors coming here, but you're a graduate student. How did you get involved in materials research?
Well, to be honest, I somewhat fell into it, but I was very much drawn to it. My junior year here at Florida State, I did my undergraduate here. I took an internship with a telecommunication company, and they had me investigate why the batteries they were using in their field units were not lasting as long as they were supposed to. So they had me investigate this, and I found out that the material side applications for this were just astounding. So I came back after that internship. I fell in with a research group here. Actually, my advisor, Dr. Zhang, is an authority on the subject. And I decided that I would stay here for the master's and the PhD, working on taking what we have existing, as engineers often do, and making it more efficient. And that's what we're doing on the material side of things in energy storage devices.
How many graduate students are involved in research in
So in our
materials?
user program, and then maybe you folks can estimate FSU students, but in our user program, there's about 350 individual different graduate students and postdocs who come to the magnet lab. And then in terms of the departments, maybe you can estimate better than I, if I can throw you that football.
Well, as part of the Material Science and Engineering PhD program, I teach one of the core courses, and amazingly for a graduate course, there's usually 20 graduate students in that course in a particular semester.
And they're across disciplines too,
They're across discipline. They're from essentially all departments on campus. And so it's a very interdisciplinary experience, especially when they give their final project presentations, which cover everything from biology to batteries to nanotubes. To many different materials and techniques. In each of the departments, each of the science departments, you can usually identify, let's say on average, maybe 10 or so graduate students that have materials-related projects.
That's really interesting. And all of the research is original, or does it stem off of other?
It's absolutely original. I mean, all of the graduate students have advisors, and in the PhD MS&E program, they actually have more than one advisor from different departments. but the students definitely have an integral part in driving the inquiry and the measurements and the theory and whatnot. But they're working very closely with their advisors in defining the problems and working out the problems.
So, maybe we could kind of go topic by topic on areas that citizens would really be impacted by.
Right.
So I can always ask about my favorite. How do you cross materials, magnets, and cancer research?
Ah, okay. So this is actually another application of magnetic resonance imaging. And with the higher fields, we're able to look at other elements. Jim mentioned that we work with the whole periodic table. Magnetic resonance imaging, as it's now practiced, just looks at hydrogen. So basically, when it's looking at your body, it's saying, where's the water, where's the fat? What we're able to do with the higher fields is now start to look at other elements. Your body has actually hijacked some sodium atoms, some potassium atoms, and iron atoms, and it uses these to work. And so we've pioneered sodium MRI, and so we're only imaging where's the sodium. And it turns out that's important because before a cell dies, it sucks up extra sodium. So if you want to study a cancer tumor that has received chemotherapy, not all chemotherapy treatments work. But within about 48 hours, we can see if the cells of the tumor are sucking in extra sodium, which means they will die. The only other option with conventional MRI is to wait weeks to see if the tumor's actually shrunk. And so just getting that feedback so much more rapidly.
So within days, you can see whether a cancer treatment has been effective on a
tumor.
On
absolutely.
A tumor. And you're doing this with live organisms right now?
Yeah, this is now done with rats. And so our high field magnet doesn't have enough room to put a person inside, and it's obviously cutting edge research, so it's done on living animals though. Someday
cancer patients around the world will go in to a sodium MRI and its home will be here at FSU.
Could very well be, could very well be. And then potassium might well map how well your nerves are working, so if you have degenerative nerve diseases, which a lot of autoimmune diseases are. So you might be able to actually image how the nerves are starting to lose function in a limb. We're also imaging migraine headaches in rats. And we found that, and again, it's our users. I sometimes slip into the we language.
It's all a family there.
It's the whole family, that's
right.
what it is. Have found that sodium during a migraine actually concentrates in the eyeballs and around the eyes. And people who suffer migraines have these visual effects. And who knows, that may well be linked.
Now, in the world of energy storage, that's another one. That's where your research is, Michael.
Yes,
what has your research been focusing on?
Mostly what I'm doing is in the modeling and simulation department. Again, we're taking something that's been done, but we're trying to find out what we can do to make it better. So what I use is some electrochemical tools to look inside of a already assembled cell and see what physical mechanisms are at play and how they're affected by different things like temperature, cyclability, and that sort of thing. So we can actually use this in a cross-platform. Electric vehicles, portable devices like laptop batteries.
We've got a couple of things. We have like a laptop battery here and camera and a smartphone. All this stuff involves batteries and like the lithium-ion batteries. So you're basically trying to make these more efficient?
Yes, and we're also looking into what causes them to fail and what situations make them last longer. This is crucial in everyday life, just from consumer electronics to new energy storage systems that will be used for grid parity, for smart grid technologies that we're working on at FSU.
So at some point, you were one of those graduate students in Dr. Brooks's class, right? Was that your project that you presented on?
Yes, he was kind enough to let us present our research in lieu of doing a separate research topic, as long as it was original, which thankfully mine is. So, so we were able to present that, and it was actually a good experience to get out there and actually be able to discuss amongst people from different departments what you do, because somebody who, say, is in industrial engineering or in physics is going to look at what we do in different ways, and you always get to take away something beneficial from that.
So what other kind of research are the students in the class doing? I mean, these are the up and coming researchers who are going to be doing things like creating the next, I don't know.
One example, just because it ties together two things that we've talked about already, there's actually research on lithium, where magnetic resonance imaging, where the researchers are looking at lithium ions. And there we're using magnetic resonance imaging, but we're looking at batteries and how the lithium moves in and out of the battery. Because batteries, as Mike was saying, they lose their capability after multiple cycles of discharge recharge. And so our hope is to be able to image with very high resolution, where's the lithium going, why is it not working as well as it did. Sorry for jumping in there, but
actually it's amazing in this class. Each project is very different, and you know, it reminds me of the doctor's office when we go in for our physical, and they put various sensors on our fingers and our arms and so forth, and look into our eyes and whatnot. There's just an enormous amount of technology in medicine that has basically come from labs like we have at FSU. In chemical engineering, we have people that are looking at amyloids, which are you know, a biomolecule that is relevant in Alzheimer's disease. And they're looking at, you know, how these things, you know, stick together and cause problems, and also how they conduct electricity. You know, are they useful for anything else? We have people that are working on elastomers in the mechanical engineering department, which is essentially a piece of plastic, and when you put a voltage on it, it expands. And this sort of effect and this sort of material can sometimes be put in subcutaneously in the arm or whatnot to either monitor or stimulate biological activities. There's questions about whether or not it's, you know, biocompatible with the body or not. Also, there's some students that are working on silks and asking similar questions about the spider silk.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know what, I was like, silks, really?
Again, asking questions about biocompatibility and new materials. Sometimes nature makes polymers, complex protein polymers, that have function that your regular polymers in industry do not. There's a lot of work on nanowires, carbon nanotubes, and also silicon nanowires. It turns out that the combination of these two is very important for making very efficient fuel cell electrodes. One of the big problems in energy storage and also energy harvesting is the electrodes involved, which involve very complex processes where the charges and ions are moving in and out of these quasi-solid objects. Sooner or later, these things can crumble. And Greg also is interested in that problem from the NMR point of view.
Let me ask about one more, because I take it personally. My research was always dependent on how fast computers could operate. Mm-hmm. So are things going on that are going to change the face of computing?
Yeah, absolutely. There's conventional architectures for computers, faster silicon devices, and some of the most perfect transistor materials, and transistors are the switches, the billions of switches in your computer. The materials that give you the fastest transistor switching are also used as basic research materials to study just how do the electrons behave in there, because they tend to behave collectively. What is collective behavior? If you have one person walking through a sports stadium, they can go in a straight line. If you have 83,000, then you end up having to slow down, and you're more like a liquid. You're flowing around objects. So there's basic research there. There's also research to use the magnetic field of each electron. Each electron has an electrical charge. Every computer is only taking advantage of that. Electrons also carry a small magnetic field, and there's some basic research involved in trying to harness that property of the electron. It's called the spin, in order to make quantum computers, they're called, which would be almost unimaginably more capable than today's computers.
We're basically running out of time. If people want to learn more about this, they can go to materials.fsu.edu and learn more about the program, and it also link you to all the other disciplines and that are involved in this. And this is very interesting. I wish we had more time to talk about it. Thank you very much. We've been talking with Dr. Gregory Boebinger, Dr. James Brooks, and Michael Greenleaf about materials science research at Florida State University. When we come back, Dr. Barron and I will talk one-on-one about more issues in education. Welcome back to Issues in Education. I'm Suzanne Smith, talking with Dr. Eric Barron, the president of the Florida State University. Dr. Barron, we've been talking about material science research. Why is that so important to FSU?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. Think jobs, think innovation. You know, material science and engineering is transformative in terms of products that end up in everyday households. I think the other thing you think about is just that impact on individuals' lives includes their well-being. And you know, we saw a perfect example. You know, an aggressive cancer, normally you have to wait weeks to see if chemotherapy has been effective. You know within 2 days, because they can image an element in a tumor that tells them a cell is dying. You know, fantastic. Who would have thought that we would be able to even think this way? I think the third element of it is that it builds on a whole group of disciplines, from physics to chemistry to biology to engineering. And so you take the strengths of the university, and in combining them, you make it even stronger.
Well, how do you want to tie this into your big ideas search?
It is part of our big ideas. So that group is actually, the group we were interviewing, is actually meeting to say, what things could we add to our programs here that would transform us to another level in materials research? We're good. We have a mag lab that's fantastic. What kind of investment would it take now to go to even the next level in terms of international prominence? So that is part of the big ideas.
There's been a lot of talk about increasing tuitions for STEM degrees, and a lot of the ones we talked about today are STEM degrees. Why is that viewed as a viable possibility of raising tuition for that? Okay, so you know, this is actually kind of a tricky topic. Universities are in dire straits for dollars to innovate. For 5 years in a row we've been cutting. National story. How do you innovate while you're cutting your budget? Because you can't say, okay, all of you people please leave, because now we're going to spend money on this field. So part of this is a resource idea. And the second piece is, should everybody pay for it? Believe it or not, a credit hour at Florida State can cost us as little as $50 to teach to as much as $7,000 to teach. Obviously, the STEM fields are on the more expensive, they require laboratories so they're much more expensive. So should everybody pay in order to do more STEM areas? Or should those degrees that yield very high-paying jobs and also cost more, cost a little bit more? It's not a big difference we're talking about, but even $100 difference in credit hour, if you start to multiply that by thousands of students, not $100 credit hour, $100 a semester, if you multiply that by thousands of students, you can have a real impact. The legislative session, there's also been talk about allowing some universities to have tuition setting flexibility. Explain what that is and how it would affect FSU. Okay, so I don't know whether this will pass. It's passed a Senate committee and a House committee. As of our taping day, which is February 22nd.
Right.
22nd.
It has the potential to be transformative. How are universities accountable in this state? We're actually accountable by how many students we graduate, not how good a job we do. We keep track of all those things, but the funds we get do not reflect how good a job we do. This is an opportunity for the state to set metrics, and if you achieve those metrics, the universities have more flexibility to charge a market rate, and therefore it provides more money for excellence. And Florida State are the two universities that meet the criteria to be labeled as preeminent universities in the state.
How has FSU and the other universities in the system been doing this year in the legislative session?
It's not an easy session. That bill that I just talked about is a kind of bright light. The governor began with flat budgets as a proposal, no tuition increase. The Senate proposed to take our cash on hand. For FSU, it would be about $55 million in one fell swoop that they would take. This is significant. And in the House bill, they cut the state university budget significantly but allow tuition increases. And there we might be looking at as much as $28 million in recurring losses. These are big numbers, but we're not done yet.
This month we've been talking about the sciences. Last month we talked about the arts and the 7 days of Opening Nights Festival. As university president, is it difficult to balance the desire and need for arts education versus that of science education?
You know, I never think that way. And I don't know why I don't think that way. I love the arts, and I love the sciences, and engineering is, you know, full of huge opportunities. And so the mark of a great university is to be good in all of these things. And so that's what the job is, to help us have good faculty and good students and allow them the opportunity to really excel. I'm not wedded to one discipline or another.
Well, were you wedded to one of your favorite, what was your favorite event at this year's 7 Days of Opening Nights Festival?
You know, I managed to go to 5 or 6 events, and I had a good time. I would have a hard time picking a favorite. I had about 90 circus students with me at the Acrobat.
The Golden Dragon.
Okay, so that was just fun because you're with those students. I thought parts of Susan Farrell's ballet were just exquisite, and then there, you know, the gospel choir, and you know, it just was played. It was hard to pick a favorite.
That's our time for now. Please join us again next month for more Issues in Education. You can watch the premiere episode of Issues in Education the first Wednesday of every month at 7:30 p.m. That means you can see the next new episode on Wednesday, April 4th as WFSU-TV. Join us as we discuss the latest developments in higher education happening around the state and across the country. If you have questions that you would like us to address in this program, you can email us at issues@wfsu.org. Again, that's issues@wfsu.org. If you would like to see past episodes of Issues in Education, head to the President's website at president.fsu.edu. I'm Suzanne Smith with the Florida State University President Dr. Eric Barron for Issues in Education. We'll see you next time.
Financial support for the production of Issues in Education is provided by the Florida State University License Plate. Your FSU license plate supports scholarships for students who enrich and contribute to our communities. Special programs, gift certificates, and rebates for first-time buyers online at fsu.edu/mytag.